So first of all, good afternoon to everyone. Let me just give you from where I'm coming. I never in my career, never had this word marketing attached to my designation. I was never a marketing executive. I was never a brand manager. I was never a, head of marketing or a CMO, what have you. But I was fortunate enough to always, be in a business role wherein marketing, HR, supply chain, operations would roll into me. So they would report into me. So I have a perspective which is very unique in the sense that it is equidistant from all the functions and kind of very neutral view in terms of, so I can evaluate an HR, HR industry, how it has evolved, or marketing industry, that's the topic today, in terms of how it has evolved over a period of time. So I'll kind of, start from there. So if you see, when we say disruption, why not a change or evolution? The word disruption is very, very important. Because evolution happens when you improve over a period of time. So we humans kind of were Neanderthal someday, and then maybe we had a tail also, then it vanished. It's like an evolution, all these species involved. But what has happened in marketing actually is complete disruption. The whole and when it disruption basically means the rule of engagement completely change, and that's what happened with the marketing. And the sole reason behind that has been technology and internet. So that basically is very, very crucial. Now, when we look at our, if you look at the our course books like Kotler, for example, or if you listen to the academy, people from, like for example, Philip Kotler or Jagdish Sheth and all that, we get to know that marketing actually is not very old in terms of when it started. It's basically 120 years of they have a legacy of 120 years old. But let's say trading typically started some 4,000, 5,000 years ago. And so from trading to marketing, that basically has been an evolution, meaning that people would go to a place from Silk Route and all and sell the product. But then it became a marketing because then there was a competition, and then there were more people selling the same product, and people realized that, oh, my the demand for my product is not in Persia, but maybe somewhere else. So people started figuring out the segments and all that where to sell. That's how it evolved, right? But fundamentally, the question has been the same, which is that you have a product, you have a buyer, you have a seller, and then there's a currency which kind of exchanges hand, and it facilitates the transaction of of this product, how it moves from buyer to seller to buyer. Now, if you see, so last 4,000, 5,000 years, the equation at least remained there. But if you see today, in today's world, the boundaries of all these elements of this equation is also getting hazy. Now, just look at social media. I mean, social media. We all basically are there on social media. We have our handles, we have accounts. Are we consumer of social media or are we product of social media, right? So in this equation itself, basically that question arises that who is product and who is consumer, right? So that basically is something which is a very important point to keep in mind, that the fundamentals of trading basically is changing big time, and the reason behind that again is technology. Now, if you look at network marketing, which has basically become pretty big globally, Robert Kiyosaki, who is a great writer of books on finance and all that, he basically has dedicated one book on network marketing. Now, in network marketing, the buyer is a seller. So, the person who buys the product also sells the product and also consumes the product. So then again, if you look at from the equation point of view, it is, the fundamentals basically are shaking there. Now you look at so let's look at a traditional marketing. You have a brand manager whose job is to he's a custodian of the brand, and what it means is that he has to ensure that the brand exudes trust, enough, and create that value in the minds of the prospective buyer. That buyer basically takes a decision of buying the product. Now, in today's world, you see, we all as consumers go to Google and look at the reviews. We go to Amazon. If you have to buy, we look at the review. And who's giving the review there? It is the customer who's giving the review. So customer becomes a brand custodian, you see. So what happens is that in today's world, traditional marketing actually has, is losing relevance, or is changing its shades. We will get to know. But the fact remains that, how things basically are changing. The trading per se, what it used to be, is changing. Now let's look at another point, which is your price. So you have to pay money, right? You have the currency basically. Now, of course, there are different modes now: cash, check, credit card, debit, and then you buy now, pay later, and all that. But look at Starbucks example. It's beautiful. So what Starbucks does is that, Starbucks, you pay upfront. You pay. You may not be buying the product, So actually, Starbucks has, I think there was a study or there was some report I was reading. Starbucks has the unutilized funds, basically, meaning deposits of customers, which basic. So if you kind of stack up all the companies who have typically you'll have banks where deposits are. Starbucks would be at some 300 or 350 rank if they were to look at Starbucks also as a bank. So they have so much of money with them which is unutilized. That means that people are not anymore today paying for product, they're paying for brand. So look at the power of the brand which the modern world companies are kind of exerting. They basically are using the brand and so beautifully that they are able to get far more than what, let's say, traditional marketing company would do. So this is what basically is changing all over. So now if you look at as far as I'm concerned, I am an engineer, right? So an engineer typically has a very binary mind, 0 1, and for me the exposure to marketing actually happened at IMI and through Kotler, right? And one thing I would mention here is that unlike other B schools, the IM's pedagogy is such that you can take you can kind of create a portfolio of subject. You can create a bouquet of subjects which necessarily doesn't have to be specific to one stream. So I kind of took a lot of subjects from marketing. I took subjects from finance and HR and built a kind of a course bouquet for myself, basically, which which I felt was very important for me from learning point of view. Now, but having said this, marketing actually for me was Kotler. And when it comes to Kotler, the first thing in marketing everyone knows is 4 P's, right? You have product, you have place, you have promotion, and you have price. So if you look at product, you see, if we were to look at product from marketing point of view, my second job, was with Adidas. So when I entered Adidas, and so let's say I was an engineer, did my course in marketing, sales, and all that, and entered into industry in the front line, department like sales and marketing. That's where I entered. So for me, naturally, I would refer to my books to understand what's happening, and then I would try to correlate that with the real world in terms of how things translate, how the theory translates. And the first shock to me was that in the product department of Adidas, what I found was there were doctors, PhD, medical doctors, right? There were bone specialists, they were leather specialists, but they were not a single person from marketing. Now, marketing was very different. Marketing was promotions and trade promotions and all that. And here we had researchers actually who basically would be working with athletes and who would be doing a lot of studies and research and then developing a product. So I was part of a very interesting project wherein Adidas was in India. Adidas was launching cricket shoe. Because Adidas typically globally is into, soccer, and they are in basketball. But India is a very peculiar country with cricket being there as number one sport. So Adidas India took the initiative of launching shoe. So I kind of saw that firsthand in terms of what product development means. And believe me, there was no marketing manager, and Adidas had a marketing manager, big team of marketing. They came very later. So the question basically which came to my mind was that, okay, I learned that product basically is important from marketing point of view, but here there is no, there is no marketing person. So what's happening here, right? Now, if you look at the current, in the modern context, if you look at the successful companies, Apple, Apple basically, what is the product of Apple? When it started, they started with desktop, right? And then they introduced, iPhone, the iPod, and then they graduated to iPhone, and today we have watch, and of course you have, iPad. So what is one product? They don't have a product. They basically have a series of products, and over a period of time, organization has successfully delivered one product after another one and have created a legacy there. Now, if you look at Starbucks as an example, it started as a coffee beans company. So you would go to a Starbucks store, they would give you a bag full of coffee beans, but then they got into cafes, which is basically Starbucks how we see. And that is not all. I mean, they got into Frappuccino, which is a bottle cold, flavor, latte basically. So that is the product which they are the number one company in the coffee drinks there in the space, and that is sold in supermarkets. So, and then they sell music CDs, and very successful in that. And then they also have, ice creams, coffee. I think so. They basically beat Haagen-Dazs in terms of coffee, coffee flavored ice creams. And so big. So what is the product? I mean, would you call it a coffee company? Would you call it a cafe, a retail? What will you call that? Look at Amazon. Started as a bookseller. These are the top companies. Look at Amazon. They started as a book-selling, e-commerce company. But they're today biggest is AWS, web services. So, and from B2C to B2B. So, so the point is that what is the product? And if Steve Jobs possibly had left product to a marketing department, would they have been successful in launching so many products? So that's a fundamental question. There's nothing right or wrong. It's just a kind of a question which I thought I'll put on the table and for discussion, because this is something which is happening in today's world. Now let's look at place. And just basically go by product, place, that thought process I'm following. Look at place, look at Amazon again. Look at Apple again. I mean, Apple basically was like IBM was selling, computers, but they opened Apple stores, iconic stores. And when they opened Apple stores, they were far superior to what retail industry was doing then. Their stores were ranked very, very high in terms of footfalls, all the criteria you have in terms of all the matrices you have for the store. And then look at Starbucks again, from a coffee bean to cafes. So this is basically what again, if you look at product, place, I think that was a toolkit which kind of must have worked at that point of time, but then things have evolved and gone deeper, have become more philosophical today, that one has to dig far deeper today. One has to have far more deeper thought process to kind of come out with a solution, come out with a proposition, and then kind of figure out what will be the product and how it will work out. Now let's look at promotion. We talk about promotion being an important part of marketing. Zara is the most successful company. Zara's, founder had been in Forbes top richest people in the world. It has been very successful in terms of they have done so many achievements under their belt, but they don't promote at all. They don't have a market. I mean, of course, they have some bit of marketing budget, but in terms of what is the scale they have, they do not spend advertising money at all. Same thing holds for Starbucks. Starbucks didn't sell any, they didn't do much of advertising initially. I mean, of course, now they do a little bit here and there. But the point is that if you look at from 4P's point of view, I think, things have evolved or disrupted or changed, whatever you call it, over a period of time, that a lot of, fundamentals, basically, even Philip Kotler says that, a lot of things have changed and he needs to kind of, it's become difficult for him to keep track with what is happening all around. So this is about 4Ps. Now the other thing basically I see is what is happening is that Jagdish Seth basically is a renowned professor in the space of marketing, and he basically had mentioned, I think he had come to our campus also, I remember. So there also he had mentioned, but he keeps mentioning that. I mean, on YouTube also you'll find a lot of videos of him, and he keeps saying that that marketing actually is economics making business sense. So that's the definition, is that marketing is economics making business sense. That's what he says, right? But I feel that in today's world, marketing is nothing to do with economics. It is basically tech-enabled human connection. It's basically connecting humans using technology. So it's all about psychology. It's all about psychology. It is all about technology. It is about neuroscience. So you have neuromarketing, which is basically very prevalent nowadays. A lot of people are doing a lot of work in that. AI, basically. So today you have something called FB Pixel, Facebook Pixel. So you think of a product and suddenly you start seeing so many ads on your Facebook feeds and on Twitter feeds and Instagram. How does it happen, really? It is basically neuroscience. It is basically people. These big companies are keeping track of what we are thinking, and then we start seeing those ads. So basically, it has become highly technical. Is what I feel that that is a big change which has happened, and that definitely is more like a disruption in the space of marketing. Now, it has become highly quant-driven and analytic-driven, which I think was not the case earlier. I mean, I remember my initial days, we would talk whenever we used to have marketing meeting. The idea would be, let's discuss market share, let's discuss competition, shelf space. Those kind of questions were generally asked, And now one of the famous phrase, I don't know who said that, is that, we all know that 50% of marketing money goes for waste, but we don't know which 50% basically is that. So therefore people do spend, whatever money they have. But today, if you see the marketing, there are so many very clear cut matrices. For example, CAC, customer acquisition cost. Every company tracks, every progressive company would track a customer acquisition cost. Every company would track CPC, which is your cost per click. In terms of, because cost per click typically is more for internet companies, wherein how much money are you spending when people are clicking your ad on Google. Then you have LTV, which is lifetime value of a customer. So these kind of parameters, I mean, I didn't hear in the initial, phase of my career, but nowadays these are the words which are being used, and all these are the, important performance measure for a marketing, so-called marketing, department, if that is what we have to call them. So I feel that marketing actually, has, if we were to look at from evolution point of view, I think marketing has become so big today that it just cannot be relegated to one department. It has to become the KRA of the founder, if it is a startup or let's say CEO. If one does that, and I think though HR also has the same role to play. I mean, I feel HR. I mean, of course, the topic is marketing, but I feel both marketing and HR are the subjects which have become so important that they cannot be left to a particular department. They have to kind of the CEO of the company or the top leadership of the company, they all have to have same kind of the challenges or the performance measures as far as the marketing is concerned and the HR is concerned. And then kind of you can have really a department like a product department wherein and product department has become highly evolved today. I mean, you have the design thinking which comes into product. So product is not at all in the traditional way marketing part of marketing department. It has evolved as a standalone department in its own way. So you have product managers which have become very sought after career options for people. Similarly, you have growth hackers who look for whose job is to ensure that there's a growth happening. So this is what I feel, that the marketing per se basically has evolved a lot from the point of, if you see from the point of view of CEO. But if you go back to the conventional way of marketing, wherein you had department handling a product and handling some promotion, that I think has lost its relevance. Sure. So Steve Jobs basically is saying that marketing actually is, of course, I mean, product and all we talked about, but what he says is that marketing actually is understanding the core value, of what you stand for, right? And then are able to communicate that to a certain set of people who share the same value system. So it's nothing to do with the customer segmentation. It is nothing to do with targeting your customer. It says that you should know your core value. The organization should be able to know the core value, and then should be able to communicate that to the like-minded people, because those like-minded people are going to be your customers. Now that can be very niche segment, doesn't have to be really a very huge segment. And then kind of as you connect with them and you work with them, and those customers, those can be your customers, those can be your employees as well. But you're able to create a community. Now that's how basically today business leaders are looking at it, is that you kind of create a core value. Let's look at Starbucks. Starbucks basically core value is the finest coffee possible, and they kind of have been able to translate that into a bean bag, or they have been able to they basically sell coffees in their cafes, they sell coffees in aeroplanes, and then they have been able to convert that into cold drinks. So the point is that what is your core value? What do you stand for? Which sounds like vision and mission, but I think so that is where now today, in today's world, everything is converging. That if you start thinking from that point of view, you suddenly see that whether it is 4 P's or 7 P's, all those becomes your toolkit. You obviously use all those things in terms of how do you kind of exert yourself in the market space. But then the point of very important point is that you have a core value, and you don't stick yourself to one one product. Now, if you look at from this point of view, if you look at the modern companies and the old companies, you find today also Coca-Cola, though even still is a big brand, it hasn't been able to stretch its boundaries and hasn't been able to get into different categories. For example, what a Starbucks has been able to do, or for that matter, Amazon has been able to do, or Nike has been able to do. Similarly, you have the Lux basically. So HUL as a company would have come up with multiple kind of soaps, but when it comes to, let's say, a Lux or a Lifebuoy or Lidl for that matter, they kind of brands have kind of bound themselves in one boundary and are living there. So that's a kind of difference. Now, I feel that throughout the 50s and I would say 80s, that time frame is the time when I think the mass media was dominating the mind space. We all would watch TV and read newspapers, which were very controlled kind of mediums which were there, and these product companies would kind of take a lot of space there and would bombard their ads, and we would see them. It was not a very innovative kind of scenario, or possibly from that point of view, that itself was an innovation in terms of how they were selling their products. How, for example, trade earlier would be. So when you would have merchants from India would be traveling to Europe, that itself was an innovation from one point of view. And then came the traditional marketing, wherein brands became brands through billboards and all that, and hoardings and flyers and all that. But as sometime in 70s, 80s, when Silicon Valley phenomena started happening, we had this technology company, we started mushrooming in all over in the US and all that. That's where basically the change or the challenge to the older system, I think was emerging. But because that industry was completely led by the tech guys, and they really were not bothered about marketing too much. That was a parallel world actually. So you had one world where you had the Fords, and you have Coca-Colas, and you have the Kellogg's of the world, which was basically ruling the the wavelength. And then on the other hand, you had Silicon Valley companies, Bill Gates, and Apple, of course. So these people were building IBM. These people were making technology products and were living in their world. I think so. A very critical point was when Steve Jobs hired John Scully. That case. I don't know whether still taught at IMI, because I remember that case in some context. I don't know whether it was organization behavior or it was a marketing case. But we had this Harvard Business School case which talked about the clash of John Scully and Steve Jobs. I think that was the point when when Steve Jobs decided that they have to become big, or the board decided of Apple decided that they have to become big. They hired the CEO of PepsiCo, to kind of take the mantle from Steve Jobs and basically make Apple a big brand. It didn't really happen. It became pretty ugly. And then Steve Jobs went on, and he kind of, with his own value system of innovation and passion, he kind of created Pixar Entertainment, which again became a pretty iconic brand in the US, in the Hollywood industry. And then during that time, the board realized that John Scully was not adding much of value, and from the point of view of what was happening in the company, the employees were leaving. So they got Steve Jobs back. And the second era of Steve Jobs in Apple kind of changed everything, and then he started introducing the product. The point is that was for the first time, I feel, when the two different worlds which existed during the 80s, or let's say 70s, 80s, they came together. One was John Scully, the representative of the traditional marketing, and then you had a Steve Jobs which represented the modern world, and then they clashed, and then things started changing. Now, when it comes to India, if I see, it all happened in Silicon Valley, but in India, I think the things took some time to translate. Even during my career, I would meet a lot of people from different traditional marketing backgrounds. Would look at from the point of view of hiring a FMCG guy for a product which basically would be very technical, and would realize the mistakes there. So I would say that during 2000, I would say 2000 to 2015, these 15 years, I would say, is the time where the tug of war which happened, in the US somewhere in 80s, kind of also was happening here. But now in 2020 onwards, I think so the clear winner is your modern world marketing, which basically is your a value system. If you look at the companies which are coming up in India as well, you have Lenskart, which is fundamentally a value company, which doesn't talk about products. Of course, they have products. That is what you have to sell. But the value system is pretty great. I mean, let's say, even, our couple of alumni from IIMs who have done a great job in terms of the product the company they have launched. So fundamentally, they have a deep value which they want to connect with customers, and then offer multiple products once the value is connected. So I would say that basically is a big disruption, because one is a technology disruption, and second big part is the whole thought process disruption, wherein things are moved from tangible to intangible. And once you get into intangibility, you get into that gray area. Suddenly, it opens a whole host of things. It opens the whole new world for you to experiment with your product, because now you have loyal customers who are following you, and you can sell anything to them because your value system is working. The challenge is that how will it translate later on? For example, if you look at the Apple journey, they had Steve Jobs, and then they have a Tim Cook who's doing a phenomenal job, and he's continuing the legacy of Steve Jobs. The important point here is that will they be able to create and nurture such leaders going ahead, so that such companies basically stand on firm footing with a very intangible word called value? And if that happens, possibly, I think it's a good, the days are very good for marketing, because now it has humanities, it has psychology, it has technology all coming together, as long as it's not relegated to one department. If it basically, the leadership takes the mantle of marketing and then move forward, it's a great time for being a marketer today. So I think with this I end my talk. I don't know if it was good, bad. I mean, you can ask questions, and I'll be happy to.
I think we'll ask some questions. I'll ask some questions. So, I was reading about garments, the business you are in currently. Basically, we look at it as a product, but in today's world, it is not a product; it is a service. In the sense that I ask what is it that I'm looking for in a particular garment, and then you design what exactly I'm looking for. So it is not a standard product that you come and sell to me and buy, like I buy a Raymond coat or something. It's not what it is. It's something which is very customized to me, and therefore it is effectively a service company, and it is not a product company. So based on your experience, so what would you like to share with the audience?
Okay. So see, actually, again, the fundamental point is, if you see, it is the value. Not many people would like to go for customized garment, and many would like to go for a customized garment. So it depends on how do you see it. Now, coming to particularly our business, I feel that it's like customization basically, of course, appears like a service, but at the end of the day, you are buying a product. Now, the moment, like I was telling you earlier while we were chatting before the discussion, we went online. Um, once you have once you automate the process of customization, then it becomes kind of, then ultimately it can become a product there. So if you want to buy a jacket, for example, if you want to buy a coat for yourself, you go to a ready-made store and buy a coat for yourself, right? And if you go to a customized seller, for example, like us, if you come to us, we'll make a quote for you. Now, for you, at the end of the day, is a product, and for you're getting a product, but you're getting it through an interaction which is happening between you and the seller, and therefore you are looking at it from service point of view. But fundamentally, what connects both of us is the value that you are looking for, from the point of view interaction. You feel that, oh, this a customized garment is far better than the ready-made garment. Some people would say, oh, customized could be expensive. Now, for that customer, the value basically is maybe money saved. So they would say, okay, fine, I would go to a ready-made store and buy from there, assuming that ready-made garments might just be cheaper. So let's say that same customer, if he sees that possibly tailored garments are cheaper, he may avail a service, from us, let's say. That is what happens in your mind. But at the end of the customer basically is a value seeker there. So what I feel is that, of course, you have a service. Now again, let's look at from Starbucks point of view. Is a Starbucks service or a product? You're buying a coffee, and possibly you're buying a coffee from a store, and they customize your drink there. When they're customizing your drink, it's a service. But then at the end of the day, it is product. But then not everyone goes to Starbucks. Some people think that Starbucks is a great place. Some people think it's a waste of money. But the value which connects you and me as a seller to you as a buyer, that become very, very important. So therefore, what is going to happen and going ahead because of technology, I think, like we discussed, 4Ps and the buyer-seller equation, I think this service-product equation also is going to go through a drastic change. Companies which are selling product today are also looking at getting into service because they feel they get to know their customer more. And companies who are selling services today want to expand to product because that will give them scale. I feel that no company today can afford to be, not open to different kind of ideas. In our context of discussion, what you mentioned, it is about service and product. In many other cases, it could be something else. But the fundamental point is, am I passionate about certain values as a seller? And if you are also as a customer have the same passion for the same value, we should be connecting, and I should be giving you as much as possible, and you should basically be, you should come to me again and again. That's the whole point.
Okay, so the other question I had was that, you said you worked in Adidas to begin with. So when multinational companies come to India, when they initially came to India, they came with a product which was a Western product, completely Western product, at a price point which was not attractive for Indian consumers. They sort of kind of converted whatever $100, $200 to Indian rupees and started selling those, and hardly any takers. India turned out to be a highly price sensitive market for them. And slowly and steadily, they have customized the things for the Indian market. So your experience of customization, you mentioned about the cricket shoes or whatever. So how exactly, did they go about customizing? Today, you have, all these sneaker brands who are able to do well in India. So how did they go about actually the customization for the local market?
Right.
Your experience based on whatever you've done in Adidas.
Correct. See, actually, if you see, most of the companies who have come to India initially, now the things have changed actually drastically. Let's say when I'm talking about when Adidas came to India and around that time, what was happening in the market, India actually was not at all an interesting market for anyone. It was not a big market. It was not really attractive market. So typically what one would do is that an Indian businessman or a trader would think that, oh, Nike has a potential in India. He would basically make a pitch to, let's say, their nearest regional office, for example, a Hong Kong Nike or Hong Kong Adidas would go there and say that, see, I have a market here. A Hong Kong guy is not interested. He would say, okay, fine. If you want to, please go ahead and buy so many shoes from us or so many, products from us and try selling in your market. most of the companies who have come to India have come to multinational companies, consumer brands have come to India like this only, that some enterprising trader would go there and would get a product, and that is how it started. Now, very few companies looked at India, and actually now going ahead, it is becoming a very common phenomenon that people are looking at India in a very different light, and they want to have rather longer term arrangement with India. So just to give you the idea about Adidas and Nike, the sports category, at that point of time, Adidas came to India on its own, meaning they set up a subsidiary office in India. They had their own company in India, which was reporting into Hong Kong. And so we had a process system. Everything basically was for India, basically, But when it came to Nike, Nike had a franchisee arrangement for Indian market. There was a master franchisee for all India. And there was, so the master franchisee were given margins which were pretty okay. So he could spend some money on marketing. But even if he didn't spend any on marketing, it was okay. Because for Nike, India was not a very attractive market. Nike only realized that sometime in, let's say, 2000, I would say 9-10, when they realized that Reebok has become big, and Puma had just entered into Indian market, and Adidas, of course, was Reebok was number one, Adidas was number two, and Puma had just entered the Indian market. Then Nike realized that they also have to have their office in India, because there was no innovation happening on the product side, because typically a trader will have his own cost equation. He would not be able to get the best of the product to the market, while Adidas was launching cricket shoes and all that. So Nike was struggling from that point of view. By the time Nike decided to come to India, the key locations where the maximum business happens was logged in by the trader. So he was not ready to kind of surrender those locations to the company. So what company did was, for example, Linking Road in Mumbai or Connaught Place in Delhi, Nike company, it became a dispute actually. So company had to set up another store next to that big store of the trader, and that kind of tussle happened. So this kind of journey, so this kind of things happen in India. But over a period of time, now you see Zara or Cafe Coffee Day or Hamleys or many of the brands which have come to India. They basically have come to India with a very solid arrangement, given the regulations, whatever regulations are there. They basically have all, Marks and Spencer actually, they've all come to India through a very solid arrangement where they drive the whole, marketing strategy for Indian market. Of course, they have a tie-up with Tatas and all that. That's from regulation point of view. But they are the ones who are running the show here in India. That is the point number one, which is on regulation and how they look at Indian market. Coming to your point about customization about Indian market, see, normally all the brands typically what they have done, they have taken a very single pricing approach, that they would sell their products in India at a slightly higher price than the best in class product, which basically competes with them. Because it's always easy to reduce the price than to take up the prices. So let's say, and they all are in India for long haul. Let's look at Marks and Spencer. They have a big plan for India. So similarly, now Nike, Adidas all have big plans for India. Similarly, Zara's and all, these companies now have not come to India with a short-term mindset that, okay, let's make quick money and then let's see what happens later. They all have a vision for India. Now, so everyone, look at Zara, for example. Zara basically sold at a far better price in Europe. I mean, if someone travels to Europe and finds Zara there, and if currency to currency you just establish the parity, you'll find that Zara is far cheaper to buy in Paris or in, even in Dubai. But in India, Zara is slightly expensive, or if the product, if it is the same price, the quality of product is not that great, as compared to, let's say, Zara Dubai or Zara, Milan, wherever that is. So the point is that everyone comes to India. Look at Starbucks. I mean, the coffee price in India, Starbucks is far higher than what you would pay if you were earning the same money in US, let's say, from that point of view. So what they do is that they basically start with a simple fundamentals, that let's set a price which is higher than the market, right? And then experiment. Then manage the mix in such a fashion that from the costing point of view can be basically controlled, and then they kind of reduce the price. So to your question, basically the pricing becomes very, very important even if they have the same product. Now secondly, Indian customer definitely are less price, they're very price sensitive. So you won't find all those shoes which typically, in case of shoes, which are available, let's say in Nike Town, New York, for example. In India, typically the product line also will be partly India made, made in India. Now, made in India products will have different kind of leather, different kind of elements which you go in. The prices will be made for India, but that basically is a manufacturing strategy which they adopt when they see some kind of traction happening, and they say, okay, now we need to invest in some manufacturing in India, and then they develop a line for Indian market, and that product typically would not be available anywhere else. And India is a big market. Possibly they would not do that for Singapore. Let's say Thailand. Singapore is still a premium market. They would not do that for Thailand. They would not do that for Cambodia because it's a small country. But India is a huge country. So what they do is that first of all they enter with the premium product. They establish a brand. Brand. If I would say that the level what they basically peg their brand at a level wherein it is far premium to others, and they try to see how the customers are reacting, and then they when they get a basic test done in Indian market, that's a good market, and then they either get into their own manufacturing in India itself, because India is a manufacturing place. I mean, you have the labor costs are pretty good here, and then they introduce Indian specific product which typically you wouldn't find anywhere else. For example, in case of again Starbucks, the coffees typically are from Tata, so the coffee comes from Tata. So they basically are maintaining their margins from that point of view. Similarly, in shoes also, let's say Adidas shoes, we set up a factory in Faridabad in Delhi. Let's look at Levi's. Levi's is a great brand on denim. Basically, they have factories all over the world, but for India, they make denims in Bangalore. So to keep the prices in control and also manage the profitability. That's how they operate typically.
Sure. There's Kirti. Kirti, if you do have a question, or can we close this meeting?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you have any question for Neeraj.
No, sir, I'm cool. But I just wanted to ask about what it goes like in marketing if we do have a niche market.
So actually, if you see any good marketing leader would say that start with the niche market only. Once you start with niche market, look at Google. I mean, Google, if you go through, Google case study, you'll find that they also started with the niche market. Facebook started with a college, network. So, and then they expanded. So niche market is always a good market because safe market. You're really not opening to the whole world. Basically, you do all the experimentation. And niche market is also good because with those customers, you have a good value connect. So therefore, customer will be forgiving and you can try a lot of things with those customers. But what happens that at the point, a very important point here is that is this niche market giving you a threshold business which you were expecting? So if the market is so small that, it doesn't make much of business sense, then you are stuck. But let's say if you feel that this niche market is also a test market for me, and from here on, we can launch a lot of products which you can do that. For example, again, I would go back to Starbucks. I'm pretty much impressed with a couple of companies, Starbucks being one of those. They started in Seattle, a small coffee shop, and they felt that, we basically make best of the coffees. Is there a market there? But customers started pouring in. It was a very niche market in a city, in a particular market. But then they realized that there's a big market out there, and they basically figured out a communication strategy and expansion strategy. And then they basically now we can see Starbucks all over the world. So to your question, if niche market, if that niche market is so cohesive with your value system, it is always good to basically work with the niche market and also see how you can expand. If the niche market is profitable enough for your business, let's say if you feel that this is enough for me and it's giving you enough returns, then you can be a happy seller to that market. And that's what my answer would be. But I don't know whether this is a kind of answer you were expecting or you kind of wanted to know something, some other nuances.
No, sir, I got the point. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay then, Neeraj, I think we are also running out of time, so we will stop this. So thank you very much for your talk. So good listening to you after a very long time.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll have some other occasion to catch up when I'm in Bombay or something.
Absolutely. My pleasure, sir.
Sure. Thank you.